Would you like us to send you the video before we kind of post it publicly?
No, that's all right.
Okay, you trust us. Thank you.
I know what I said. It's all right.
Thank you so much, Ofir.
Thank you very much.
That was awesome. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thanks a lot for your time. All good. Thank you.
Cheers.
Enjoy the
Have a
rest
good
of
day.
your time. Hey guys, we're here chatting with Ofir Gendelman. He's a spokesperson for the Arab world, for the Israeli government, and we're going to be sitting down and asking him some pretty tough questions today. Ofir, thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure.
At the wonderful Intercontinental Hotel. I think we had to say that just so we got the room. Can you just explain your position really quickly just before we get started? You're the spokesman to the Arab world for the Israeli government?
Yes. My job is to convey the Prime Minister's messages and policies to the region. My job is fairly new. I've been in this position for 3.5 years. My position in itself is a revolution because we used to focus our public diplomacy campaigns on North America and Western Europe. We used to, in a way, write off the Middle East because, we are living in the middle of a very tumultuous region. Most Arab countries still refuse to acknowledge our existence, our presence, our legitimacy. So a lot of people in my government thought, it's no use talking to them. We lived through war after war after war, waves of terrorism. But eventually things changed. We understood that in order to make peace and avoid another war, we should talk directly to the Arab public opinion, usually over the heads of the respective media outlets and sometimes over the heads of leaders of political parties that are very, very extremist on their side.
Sure. I looked at some of your content on YouTube, the interviews done with Al Jazeera and other outlets. How do you think you're viewed in the Arab world? Do you get much feedback? Do you hear their opinions and thoughts about you?
In this age of social media, you get the feedback right away, right? It doesn't take 3 months for a letter to come in and so forth. So once I go off air, I get a lot of feedback. Some is very positive, some of course is very, very negative, but people are interested. So we are putting a lot of effort in social media in Arabic. The Prime Minister has a Facebook page in Arabic, a Twitter account in Arabic. Most of his videos are translated into Arabic. I'm also very active on Twitter and Facebook in Arabic. So the feedback is enormous. And the fact that they invite me again and again and again to come, I think this is an indication that this is really working.
All right, look, and I tried to look at some of the videos on YouTube, but I unfortunately don't speak Arabic, so some of them are a bit difficult. With the position you said it was very new, how did it come about? Did you approach someone in government? Did someone approach you about this kind of position? How did that come about?
Well, actually it stemmed from the Foreign Ministry. I was lucky enough to be the first ever spokesperson for the Arabic media at the Foreign Ministry. I did this job for 2 stints, and this operation, which was very successful for the Foreign Ministry, led people at the Prime Minister's office to think about a possibility in which the Prime Minister will have not only a spokesperson that speaks to the international media in English or whatever. There has to be somebody who would do this vis-a-vis the Palestinian public opinion and the region as a whole. So basically I moved from the Foreign Ministry to the Prime Minister's office. I'm doing basically the same role, but of course the Prime Minister's office is a totally different surroundings, both professionally, politically, and so forth.
And I know that you started up the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Can you, just on that, is it hard is there any distinguishing kind of trends that you find that government policy is different to business policy, or is there kind of a very consistent theme that you have to bring to both roles?
Well, we think that a successful business project has to be detached from politics. Not everything in the Middle East has to be political. So I left the public sector and I moved over to the private sector, and I was the founding CEO of a non-profit organization that was called the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The idea was to bring the two business communities together, because the Palestinian Authority is a huge trading partner of ours and vice versa. And the idea was to get the two sides to work together, and if they would work together, we thought that that would encourage peace. So the huge moguls of the Israeli economy were behind it. They were very supportive. They saw great potential in it, not only a financial gain, but also they had an ideal. This was the brainchild of both a business interest and a political ideal, or what should I say, a social ideal, that peace would come through working together. So we got wonderful feedback from Palestinian business people, but unfortunately the Palestinian Authority tends to look at things from a very political prism. At first, they didn't know really how to react, how to interact with us. Then they said, we're going to support you. The Palestinian Prime Minister at the time, Salam Fayyad, said that he's going to be the keynote speaker at our gala event, which was a wonderful thing for us. But 3 hours before he came, people from his office called and he said that not only he's not coming, but he's instructed all the Palestinian business people not to come. Just shows you how the Palestinian Authority works, basically a dictatorship. And the reason that he gave is that he thought we're part of government, that he thought that we are part of what was then dubbed Prime Minister Netanyahu's economic peace plan, as if an economic peace would replace a political peace. Of course, it's nonsense. But the Palestinian business people who were invited disobeyed him. They came anyway, and they showed confidence in this project. And on a business-to-business level, it worked beautifully. But the Palestinian Authority always tried to sabotage the work of the organization. And consequently, there was supposed to be a Palestinian-Israeli Chamber of Commerce established in Ramallah. The Palestinian Authority prevented it.
Oh, wow. Look, you've mentioned the Palestinian Authority, and I saw your talk on Monday, and you mentioned there's actually two conflicting authorities that
Exactly.
want the leadership there. For people in Australia, can you explain that? Because I know that there's a legitimate one, but they don't go into the Gaza Strip for fear of being attacked.
Today we have two Palestinian governments. We have two Palestinian prime ministers. One sits in Ramallah, in the West Bank. The other one sits in the Gaza Strip. The entity that rules the Gaza Strip is Hamas. It's an internationally recognized terrorist organization. It has about 50,000 rockets. It fired over 10,000 rockets at our cities on civilian targets in the past decade alone. And the whole raison d'etre of this organization is to kill my people. This is what they want. In 2007, they took control of the Gaza Strip by force. They kicked out the Palestinian Authority. They killed hundreds of Palestinians. And since then, they are controlling this area illegally. The legal entity there should be the Palestinian Authority, should be President Abbas, but he does not dare to go to the Gaza Strip for fear of his life, because Hamas will try to assassinate him. Hamas has tried to assassinate him at least 3 times until today. So when we are negotiating with the Palestinians, we're negotiating only with the Palestinian Authority that does not control half of the Palestinian territories and does not control at least half of the Palestinian people in that region. So it's a huge challenge politically to move forward when the partner that you're negotiating with does not represent the entire side that he allegedly represents.
Sure. Look, with that kind of stuff, we've seen such huge movements in the Middle East. I think you said on Monday, this is unfounded times. This has never happened because you've got Egypt that just had their issues. Syria, there's a huge movement in the Middle East at the moment. Do you see the movement of these countries and sovereign states into more, say, kind of fanatical autocracies, more religious and that, or do you see the kind of people in the Middle East moving towards more secular democracy? Like where's the Middle East moving? Is there a constant trend there?
I can see that we're living in historic times. The last time in which the Middle East was shaped that way was in 1917, 1918. So countries that we thought are stable are now changing from within. Syria no longer exists. There is a name called Syria, but Syria is engulfed in a vicious civil war that led to the death of over 130,000 people. Other countries in the region are changing as well, and the main force behind it is the rift, the divide between Sunni Islam and Shia. This goes back 1400 years. It might sound odd to people who are living outside the region. Why deal with religion? Because things in the Western world have changed. Religion is not the prominent factor in politics, but in the Middle East this is the case. Everything is decided upon sectarian lines, religious lines. So it makes things much more difficult, and this is the reason why we see so many bloodshed.
And on that, you Iran is a big issue for Israel.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your talk on Monday about your policy for Iran. You don't want the West to give any concession to Iran.
That's right.
Can you walk us through that kind of mentality? Where's the kind of policy and idea behind that?
Look, the Iranian goal is to acquire nuclear weapons. This is undisputed. There is no other explanation for the Iranian nuclear program. They have centrifuges that enrich uranium for a bomb. They have a heavy water reactor that produces plutonium for a bomb. So when they're saying that they are producing medical isotopes and green energy, this is ridiculous. Nobody buys it. You wouldn't put $40 billion into weapons-grade equipment to have a medical isotope.
Sure.
On top of that, they have missiles that cover all the Middle East, and they're building missiles that can reach Western Europe and North America. The idea is not only regional domination, but world domination. They're saying publicly, day in, day out, for more than 34 years, that they are hell-bent of destroying my country and kill my people. Just yesterday, the supreme leader in Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, said that Jews are rabid dogs, that they are unhuman and should be killed. So you couple this extreme ideology, with the fact that they're after nuclear weapons, and they're saying, publicly, we are there to kill Israel. We're there to destroy Israel. It doesn't take much to understand that, we think that they are serious. And this is why we think that the Iranian military nuclear program is such a huge threat. By the way, not only to Israel, but also to the region and the world.
I mean, with that kind of talk, especially by a government, it must be very hard for Israel to even remain kind of impartial or take the higher moral ground. How does Israel deal with so much kind of conflicting issues and so much kind of historical hatred and feel like where do they find that middle ground?
The best solution for this is to remain strong. It's just to remain strong. Because when your enemies say that they want to kill you, and they mean it, because you see what they're doing all over the region. Who's killing the Syrians other than Bashar and Al-Qaeda? It's the Iranians. Who's meddling in domestic politics all over the region? It's the Iranians. Who's perpetrating terrorism in 5 continents? It's the Iranians. So when we and the Arab states are saying exactly the same thing, don't let Iran have nuclear weapons, I think the world should listen. We don't agree with the Arabs every single day on every single issue, but when there's such a strong consensus, the world must listen and act accordingly, because we have only one chance to prevent the Iranians from acquiring nukes. Once they do have it, it's a different Middle East and not for the better. If the sanctions are lifted now, there will be no incentive, there will be no stick for the West to use afterwards. So there is only one chance to get the right deal. We are for a good deal with Iran. We do not want any kind of problems in the region. We have the most to lose should war erupt, because we're on the firing line, right? So what we're saying to the West is very, very clear. Get a good deal. Dismantle the nuclear program altogether. If this is verified, after we know that nothing is left in Iran that could be used to produce nuclear weapons, sure, lift the sanctions, no problem, but not now. Not now. So we are hopeful that the P5+1, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council plus Germany, will reach the right decision. A wrong decision and a wrong deal, a bad deal, would not be good for the region and will actually make a peaceful solution very, very hard to attain.
Okay, and look, I'll just finish with, in your opinion, what is the best way for Israel and Palestine to come together? You said mutual recognition is so vital.
Yes.
How do you go? And you're, I suppose, the best person to talk to. You're the face of Israel to the Arab states and the media. How do you go about getting this mutual recognition?
I think that the core problem or the core reason for the conflict is not borders. It's not settlements. It's recognition. They ask of us to recognize them as a people with national rights, and we say, fine, we recognize you. You deserve your own state. let's sit together, we'll decide, what the borders are, what the other solutions to the other issues are. No problem. But they keep saying that we have no right on our country. We've been there for 3,500 years. We're no European colonialists that came somewhere, in the Middle East. We're not the French in North Africa. We're not the British in India. This is our ancestral homeland. For us, this land is like Sydney to Australia. This is where it all began for us. So if they do not recognize our right to be there, if they do not recognize our right for us to have a country on our national soil, then peace will never come. So this is why the Palestinians need to change. They need to understand that mutual recognition is key. And once we do hopefully reach an agreement, there will be an end to the conflict. I'm afraid that they want some sort of an agreement in which they could use as a stepping stone to expanding and continuing the conflict. This should not happen.
Okay, look, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
It's been a really wonderful opportunity for us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Awesome. That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We've never had the opportunity to kind of interview
Can you take a picture of us?
I will.
Okay.
How did I go? Was it okay?
Yeah, it will.
You good?
Yeah,
All right.
it was wonderful.
Better than the Arab media or not as good?
You don't have to answer that.
Should we get a shaking hands on, like real, like
Yeah.
political, like we.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Ofir.
Yeah, just one. Can we do one quickly with the camera?
Want
Oh,
to
stand
stand
up,
up
yeah.
or sit down?
Yeah, what would you like? Should I
Oh,
put on
well,
a
it
jacket?
doesn't really
I'll go professional again. Here we go. Because he looks very sharp. I have to make sure that I'm just as sharp.
Just a sec.
Oh yeah, should we do it? We'll do buttons up. Okay.
Yeah, well, we have to.
Yes, true.
Diplomatic.
It is. It is.
I'm gonna stop that. Give me a second.